Okay, this is day 2. We are at TISE East. We're in Orlando. I'm with Jason Kenton, who is the owner of the Flooring Guru. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And you?
I'm doing well. Now, you are an inspector slash installation company. Which came first?
Well, first I was an installer, and I had to replace a floor, and I thought an inspector didn't know his business, so I went to inspector school. Got certified as an inspector and learned that I'd been installing floors wrong for 12 years.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually a very eye-opening experience. So then I got out of the installation game because I figured you can't do it right. What I learned in inspection school taught me that flooring is a very difficult thing to do, and I just thought in Florida we couldn't do it. So I got out of the game. And then as an inspector, I found, my opinion is that, in Tampa, 90% of floors are going in wrong. So there is a market for a company that wants to do it right. So I'm getting back into the installation game.
So you found people were doing the same thing you were doing when you were an installer, and although you couldn't correct it, so then you got in the business to correct.
Correct. Yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience, and realized that, I learned from the guy who taught me, who learned from the guy who taught him. There was no formal training, so we were perpetuating doing things wrong, and that's very poor for the homeowner in retrospect.
So now you're all of a sudden one day in the installation business. What's the first thing you did? I mean, you've got to find people that you can either know how to do it correctly, or you're going to show them how to do it correctly, or a combination of both.
So I having been in the business in Tampa for 20 years, I've got lots of friends in the industry, and I vetted everybody to find out who was doing what and who was doing things right. And then when I found the right people, I started individually training them. I want to get them certified with organizations, but unfortunately for most installers, they can't afford to be off work for 3 days, or the cost to travel. So I'm trying to do localized training for the guys who work for me in Tampa based on the things that I see most common failures, which there's very common failures that occur all the time.
What are they?
Well, depending on the flooring type, but with wood floor, the most common things I see are floor flatness and moisture testing. In Tampa, we're a lot of slab on grade, so concrete on grade. Moisture testing is extremely important. So floor flatness, moisture testing, and acclimation are the wood floor common failures. With carpet, it's seam sealing and power stretching. That's just, it's a lost art. With tile, it's floor flatness and lippage. With these porcelain planks, a lot of these tile guys are installing them like they're square, and they don't realize that there's a difference. The TCNA has been real clear about the difference with a tile that has one side longer than the other. There's very specific rules, but these guys were never taught formally. So I take the things that I see as an inspector and try and help the guys that I work with be aware of the most common failures.
What's the reason people don't know? I mean, I realize that, like with you learned from the guy you were an assistant to or whatever, yep. And that's what happened to him and him, going back. Why hasn't this gotten better? I've been in this industry 35 years, and I think the first day I heard, hey, installation's a big problem, but it didn't seem to have been solved. Why?
There's a couple answers to that, and I'm, as I said before, I don't have a very good filter, so I'm gonna, I think the manufacturing has a lot to do with it. They're not supporting the installation side of things. Their goal is to sell flooring, and in my opinion, they've dumbed down the installation process so much that homeowners think they can do it themselves, which has turned painters into flooring installers because it's a way to make money. I can do it now. It's not a special skill. So the consumer's also been dumbed down watching commercials for some of these big box stores that everything's easy. So it makes it difficult to pay a skilled craftsman what it's worth to do the project. So when I bid a job at $5 a foot, the customer looks at me like I'm crazy because they just got a quote from one of the box stores for $2 to do the same thing. And the commercials have convinced them that it's not worth $5. So, but I need to make $5 because I have to go to school and continue to educate myself. So if I'm getting $2, I can't educate myself. That's just enough to pay my labor, pay my insurance, and have a few beers on Friday night with my friends. There's no chance to better it. So it just can't get better. There's no market to get better.
With the big box players, I mean, obviously they're controlling all the prices, what it costs to move the furniture and all the other things, netting out the whole job. Talking about the $250 installation, is it competitive with what the other players around town are doing?
So everybody has to be. The retailers are all competitive. I mean, the big boxes, the mom and pops now understand they have to be competitive or they lose jobs. And for the mom and pops, it's make or break. Home Depot or the other boxes, Lowe's, those guys, it doesn't matter if they sell flooring because they're selling electronics and other stuff. The mom and pop has to sell so many jobs a month. And the mentality is, if I don't at least come close to the price of these big boys, I'm not going to get the job.
So then really the $250 price isn't really what they're paying for installation. It's just a part of the whole job. It just is a way to maybe lure in a consumer.
Correct. And at the end of the day, the sub who's actually doing the labor is not getting $250. You know, it's way down. But yeah, the $250, it's an arbitrary number that's been decided by somebody. That's the right. And here we're specifically talking about glue down wood floors. But all of them. I mean, carpet's getting $3 a yard in Tampa. There's a company in Tampa that pays $1.65 a yard to install carpet, and he's got people knocking down his door because he has a lot of work. You can't make a living. You know, so if I'm making that, I can't continue to educate myself. There's just not enough revenue there to do it.
That's interesting. The big box players and the quality of the installation that they're doing in Tampa, what's that like?
Well, as with any trade, there are good craftsmen who work for the big boxes, and there's poor craftsmen. In general, I firmly believe that 80 to 90% of the floors are going in wrong. I know, I as an inspector, I go out and see these jobs, and you know, for me, I've set myself up where I don't do a lot of work for the mills. I don't get hired by Home Depot. I want the homeowners to hire me, so I do a lot of my work for them. You know, with carpet, they're not power stretching it, they're not seam sealing. Now, that might not be a problem if they don't have a problem. My favorite statement is it's not a problem until it's a problem. These guys have to cut corners. If they're getting, you know, if the big boxes are charging $250 to the homeowner and they're paying the installer $150 or $175, he has to knock out a lot of flooring to make a living. So in order to do that, they typically will cut corners to speed the process up. So, you know, I see a lot of poor staggers, not things that necessarily cause a failure in the flooring, but cosmetically just are inferior in an effort to speed up the process. So your quality is a little more inferior, and the speed is faster.
So then it's your observation that the big box guys are just willing to live with this, and it's just a percentage type of thing. We're going to have problems in X percentage, and that's just that, you know, the way it is.
There's no question that it's a numbers game. I haven't spoke with CEOs of any of these companies, but it's just obvious from my perception that, you know, they figure we're going to install 100 floors this month. If we got to replace 2, we can afford it. We're not worried about the end of at the bottom line. And they're also lacking, you know, what the mom and pops used to have is when the salesman was in there, he was probably a former installer or a relative, and they had experience. There's so many people selling flooring now that the experience isn't there. So it starts at point of sale. We're talking mainly about the installers, you know, deficiencies, but point of sale makes a big difference, the right product to the right customer. And these salesmen are being, you know, paid $8 an hour and told to sell flooring with little knowledge. So it starts there, and that's where the inferiority starts. Customers don't understand. I just talked to a customer last night. I showed them an engineered floor with a 5 mil wear layer. They were blown away. They hadn't seen that at any of the big stores. They didn't know that engineered floors came with a 5 mil. So customers, if they're sold correctly, it helps the whole process along. But the companies are no doubt, and I believe the manufacturers too are playing the numbers game. We'll install so many, we'll sell so many, and we'll have to replace a few, but it's still cheaper than doing it right.
Then I guess if I were to ask you, do you see things getting better anytime soon, how would you answer that?
So my wife will argue this, but I'm an eternal optimist. I'm in Tampa, and I'm trying to make a difference every day. I've reached out to most of the builders, the track homes and the custom builders, to do moisture, at least just do moisture testing. My opinion is any small step makes a difference. I think the difference is education, and it's funny coming from me. I'm 42 years old. I never finished college. Didn't think education mattered. In retrospect now, I spend $10,000 a year going to schools and learning about my trade. I'm a member of NCFE. I'm a member of NWFA. I'm a certified. I continue to educate and learn. That's the only thing that's going to make a difference. But there's no reason currently and no motivation for these installers to continue to get training. Again, the key is, you know, I can't afford for my installers to be gone for 3 days to St. Louis to take a class. They can't afford to be off work and not have income. Even if I paid for it, they can't afford that. Even the local stuff, you know, or more local stuff, it's the time off from work that can't be afforded. And that's because of the low pay. Again, if they're getting $1.75 or $2 a foot, they can't afford to miss a day. If they're getting $3 or $4 a foot, they can afford to miss a day. I believe it'll get better. I believe if those of us that are passionate and care are persistent, it can get better.
Do you see players in the Tampa market that pay more than their competitors do to install?
Yeah, but it's a margin game. We're not talking significantly better. I've started off with my retail business. I'm 50% more than the going rate for everything that I do. For example, I know a company locally that pays $325 a yard for carpet. I start my guys at $550 a yard for carpet. Cut pile. But in general, the other big players in Tampa have employees, so they're paying them hourly. So no, I don't. In fact, I think those guys are some of them are some phenomenal craftsmen, but they're not getting paid what they're worth. But they do get benefits in the other situations.
They don't have to, just because of the going price. I had on this program a month or two ago Jeff King, who was legal counsel for the WFCA, and he tells me that the Labor Department has sort of relooked at a way they interpret what constitutes an independent contractor. And basically that doesn't sound good for the independent retailer, nor does it sound good for your installation business. Is that something, then basically what that would mean is, number one, if you are an independent retailer and you are using subs, the Labor Department is going to say you can't do that anymore. That's number one. That's scary enough, but they're also going to look at the past, and I'm not sure how, but somehow or another calculate what you should have paid him for the interim had he been an employee, and that's probably going to put a lot of people out of business, I guess. I know you're nodding your head, so that's something that you're concerned about. What's your take on that whole picture?
Well, I know it just happened in California with Lowe's. I mean, they just got slammed for treating subs as employees.
To the tune of several million.
To the tune of several million fine. For me, I'm not personally worried about it. I don't do volume work. The guys that work for me do 3 or 4 jobs a month. They're obviously subs. They're not. I don't make them go to work any given day. But in the industry, it's going to put some of the mom and pops in very difficult financial spots because, the way our industry is currently set up, that's the only way it works. They have to be subs because the cost of benefits and everything else with what we're talking about, the $250 a foot standard rate, it doesn't make it profitable for the smaller retailers to be able to pay workers' comp and insurance and health and medical and taxes and still have the installer be willing to work, because now that $250 gets whittled down even more on the day.
So if indeed this does come to pass, and I know the WFCA is working to have this not come to pass, and who knows what's going to happen with that, but it would seem like if it does, that would give your installation business a potential for new life.
It would, but I'll be honest, I'm not in this for me. Again, I've got a wife and 2 kids. I want to support my family. But the fact of the matter is I want our industry to get better. That's the bottom line. I'm not my inspection and moisture testing business pays my bills. My installation business is something I'm trying to do to better the industry. It's not a breadwinner. So I don't think about it. None of this stuff for me is thought about personally how it's going to benefit me. I really want the industry to get better. I spent a lot of time with Brett Miller with the NWFA, and the NICFE organization has asked me to run for vice president. They can sense that my goal is in line with the WFCA, that I want to make the industry better. And, if this comes to pass, the industry will adjust. They have for years. Flooring has never gone away. I just don't know, I want to see a shift back to the older way where the mom and pops are more involved. But if this comes to pass, I think that's going to put another nail in the coffin.
Just in closing, you've got the ear of many manufacturers in Dalton and other places, and a lot of players in this industry. What would your suggestion be at this point if you could say, hey, here's a way we can make things better? What would you tell them?
I think it's better for the industry to have skilled craftsmen installing products. It just is. I think, it used to be, when I used to install floors, every installation instruction said, no warranty if not installed by a licensed insured professional. I honestly feel we need to go back to something like that, because, you're spending a lot of money making products, and then you have handymen installing it. And the manufacturers know this. They're getting a lot of claims that aren't their fault, but they still got to deal with that process.
It's all about the customer, I guess, is really what you're saying.
Correct. It should be. The customer is the one who gets shortchanged on all this. Even if the manufacturer's product is considered defective and they replace it, the homeowner still has to deal with the process of put their dogs in a kennel and stay in a hotel or whatever the problem is. I understand the manufacturer doesn't want to spend $1,000 or $2,000, But at the end of the day, it's the homeowner who has to deal with it the worst, even if it's replaced.
Well, interesting. I appreciate you talking with us, Jason.
Thank you so much.
And good luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Jason Catlin, the flooring guru out of Tampa. We're at TISE East, Orlando, and this is Talk Floor TV.